I have a brief statement that I'm required to read in some fashion. Here we go. My name is Greg Higgins, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I'm calling this public meeting together in order at 7 p.m. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order for March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. We are conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting, the public may access this call through video conferencing or telephone. Following the presentation of the petitioner and questions from the Commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. If you wish to provide feedback, you'll need to raise your hand. If you are video conferencing, go to the Participants tab at the bottom of the screen and click on it. Once the window is open, go to the bottom and click Raise Your Hand. The chair will call on you and you may unmute your mic. Please identify yourself with name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9. If you've already, everyone's already done the name, so I don't have to read that paragraph. All video screens will be turned off except with the exception of the Commission, Delia, and the current petitioner. Once the Commission has acted on an application, of course, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. Screen sharing will not be permitted unless absolutely necessary. All votes will be taken by roll call. We are recording this, and if you are recording, anyone out there, please let the chair know. In the event that this meeting is Zoom bombed and we're not able to get control of the meeting back, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will automatically be continued until the August 12th, 2020 NRC meeting. And at this time, I roll call the commissioners. Once again, my name is Greg Higgins, Chair. Judy?
Judy Sombrecker.
Ed?
Ed Nardi.
Nick? Nick, you're muted. Nick?
Yeah, Nick Pappas.
Okay, thank you, Nick. All right, that having been said, let's move along. We have some continuances. Well, let's do the minutes first. The May 6, 2020 minutes. Does anybody have any issues with that? We had that for quite some time, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have any. Anybody else?
Nope.
If not, I could look for a motion. That would be wonderful.
Were the 5-6 minutes first and then the 5:20? Did I have them backwards?
There's, I've got May 6th and May 11th.
6th and
Oh, yeah.
11th. Oh, right. Yeah, 6th and 11th. Right.
Yeah, so we're doing the May 6th at this point.
Yeah, so I had one minor edit to 6. I gave it to Karen.
All right, minor edit. Anything else? Otherwise, I could use a motion.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from the May 6, 2020 meeting as amended.
Second?
That was Judy and Nick. All those in favor, I've got to call it. Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. We move on to the May 11th meeting. I did have one minor change, which I gave to Karen. Anybody else have anything?
I did not.
No.
Yeah. And so, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes from May 11th, 2020 as amended.
That
Second?
was Judy. Nick seconded it. All those in favor, Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thank you, guys. All right, I need a motion. We need to open and continue the next. Could I have a motion?
Are we going to do the May 20th minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, there were.
Thank you, Judy.
There were one or two trivial edits in that, but there was one logical thing I couldn't figure out. So I think there needs to be an amendment on that. I sent it to Karen, but unfortunately it was just before the meeting.
All right, then let's hold off on that, and we'll do the 20th. We'll do May 20 next meeting.
Okay.
All right, moving along, to be continued. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to open and continue to August 20th, DEP file 1371537, which is notice of intent application, Ryan Kane, Town of Concord, 90Y Plainfield Road.
You mean August 12th, not the 20th.
Oh, you're right, August 12th.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thanks, Nick. All those in favor? Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Next, you can probably throw these two together.
Make a motion to continue to August 20th, 2020 without discussion. Notice of intent application for Walsh, 150 Garfield Road, DEP file 137-1524, and notice of intent application for Shaw, 43 Old Bedford Road, DEP file 1504.
And could you do the next one as well? Just get them.
I do see that. And for the third one is notice of intent application for James Opolis, 141 Commerfield Road, DEP file 137-1535.
And those are to August 12th as well.
August 12th. I thought that's
August
right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thanks, Ed. All those in favor, Nick,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
and I'm as well. Moving on to this evening's business. DEP file number 137-1525, 396 Great Meadow Road. Molly, are you here? Yeah, Molly, I assume you're doing it, Molly?
I am, yes.
I think we're at the end of the rope here. Can we wrap this one up?
Yeah. Good evening. For the record, Molly Obendorf with Stamsky McNary, representing for the homeowners of 396 Great Meadows Road. There were only a few final outstanding things, which we submitted July 10th, I believe. And those were the final determination from Natural Heritage, which we did receive. So we're all set there. And more substantial plantings to replace some of the larger nature trees that are being removed.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we were asked to include a timeline on our phasing plans. So that was included as well. And if the commission has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't. I think we're pretty much there. Does anyone else, any other commissioners?
No.
Not see. I see heads going back and forth, which means no. I guess I'll open that to the public. Staff have any issues? Open to the public. Anyone out there have any comments or things they'd like to add? Please do so at this point. I'll give you a little bit of a chance to get out of your easy chair and jump onto the mic. I think we can go back to screen, Delia.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to make sure I don't see somebody waving or something. There we go. Any questions out there in the public? I don't see any. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, then I would love a motion. Could I have a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to close and issue order of conditions for DEP file 137-1525 for 396 Great Meadows with findings A, B, and C. Standard conditions 1 through 19 and special conditions 20 through 59.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor? Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thanks very much, Molly.
Thank
Carry
you.
on. All right, moving right along, Commonwealth Ave, 369, 38A, and 40A, DEP file number 137-1522. Who
Greg,
is?
before we get started on that hearing, there is a Galaxy Note 10 in the meeting. If you could rename yourself with your full name by going up to the top of your photo and clicking on the carrots and the carrot next to unmute. Just rename yourself so that the commission is aware of who is in the meeting.
I don't see that on my screen, but.
If you
On the
right
Yeah.
on the second page.
Oh, okay. And R. Chasen probably ought to, please, if you wouldn't mind, your first name would be helpful if we're. Galaxy Note 10, please change. But we can continue on. All right, who's here representing the town on this one?
Hi, this is Alex Patterson from ESS.
Hi, Alex. Yep.
We have a number of people, I believe, on the call from both the town of Concord and GPI.
Yeah.
I'm not able to see everyone, but I imagine that they're here.
I see a lot.
So we had a revised submittal during the week of July 10th that I will just summarize what was provided as part of that quickly, and then we can get into the discussion.
Okay.
So we pulled out the waiver request for the work in the 25-foot no disturb zone, which again consists of plantings for slope stabilization, as a separate cover letter, and left some of that text in the project narrative, but pulled out the full request as a letter, as a standalone document. We also provided a similar letter for the waiver request for the work in the 50-foot no build zone, which consists of approximately 1,800 square feet of a portion of a impervious pathway. We provided a revised project narrative, which had a number of revisions. Again, nothing, I think it's fair to say there haven't been any fundamental changes to the design of the project overall, but a number of relatively minor things that have been clarified relative to invasive species management, the waiver request for the 50-foot no build zone, the planting tables, some minor edits to the impact calculations as a result of minor changes to the design, and other miscellaneous changes. We've provided 3 new attachments to the submittal. Attachment H is an invasive species management plan. Attachment I is an alternatives analysis for the site. Attachment J summarizes the proposed mitigation for the work in the 50-foot no build. And then attachment F, which was provided previously, has been revised to display the new proposed impact and mitigation areas. And then finally, the plans have been revised to account for all of those changes. Again, more or less minor things, nothing really substantial with regard to the actual design of the park itself. And signed and stamped plans were provided in hard copy form.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. This is Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. The one thing that I did want to add is that while there hasn't been too many substantial changes to the things that are within the 100 foot, I did want to bring up that the event barn has been removed for a variety of reasons, of which Ryan Kane and I can go into if the commission needs that, but and we've come back to the simple pavilion and restroom scenario.
Okay, thank you, Kate. That is an update I was completely unaware of.
Yeah, right. And again, I just want to bring the commission's attention to that because you know, things being what they are, that was a phase 2 anyway, but I just think that it's important to note that, you know, we've pushed that out indefinitely, and it may or may not be something that the community wants in the future, but certainly isn't something that recreation is able to take on, you know, for a number of reasons at this time.
Okay, no, great. I guess I'll ask, and I did see all the new submittals, and a lot of it, we have crossed a lot of T's and dotted a lot of I's. In relationship, we did have a site walk, which I think was quite helpful. And we did walk, just for those in the public who don't know, that the commission in its entirety walked to the trails meandering through the woods, of course, because the trails aren't there. And we did sort of note the trees that were subject to being removed, and they have been identified on a plan. Can you, and it was our impression that they were going to be identified as species and size, so we'd have a sense of magnitude. Can you bring that up on the, and I just quickly discuss that if you wouldn't mind, as to were there any, because I didn't see where the trail varied at all from the original, and that could just be me, not necessarily the reality. Are there some that we are able to save that we by doing that step?
So this is Bob White from GPI.
Mm-hmm.
So the vegetation management plan shows where the trees are for removal. And I think what I would say is, based upon the site walk and the identification of trees that were at the sort of fringe areas of disturbance for the from the original submitted plans for the trail system, we were able to pull that back quite a bit. So there are a handful of trees noted for removal that are, in some cases, they're trees that are probably not trees that we want to keep on the site anyways, because they may be hazardous trees or that factor, or trees that are in the way of keeping the path on optimal topography. So there are a handful of trees that are noted for removal. I will admit we do not have the species and sizes on those, and so
Yeah.
we will have the opportunity next week to be out there, and we can complete that information and provide that.
Yeah. Well, Bob, but my question, Bob, is were there trees that sidewalk has, that now that we laid out where the paths will be,
Yeah.
were we able to save some trees that we were able to circumvent? And if so, I didn't see those noted on the plan.
Okay. So there were trees, there were areas where we were able to, in the plan revisions, pull back the grading so that we weren't disturbing we weren't grading in areas that would cause the trees potential removal. So I'm going to say there were a number of trees through which are able to be saved because of alignment changes, or just looking at the site and knowing what we need to do to build a pathway surface.
Are those noted on the plan?
I think the presence of the trees as for their location and that they're not noted to be removed represents their retention.
Oh, I get it. By elimination, by not being on the plan, they were saved. Is that what you're saying? Normally, and let me just say, usually what we're accustomed to do is see, this is what we planned on taking down. Here's how we rerouted it. Note that trees 1, 12, 15, and 29 were able to be saved. That's I guess, my expectations in not seeing that, because I thought there was a few, not a great many, to be honest with you, but that we might be able to save, and it would have been nice to know.
Okay.
Did we do a good job on our site walk? Is my,
I think we did, and actually, I think in anticipation of the site walk, the work that we did on location, knowing that would be an objective of the commission. So I think where we had areas of basically, sort of fringe areas along the grading of the side slopes of the pathway, once the surfacing was applied, we were able to condense that quite a bit in order to really remove trees from even a judgment call, to make sure that keeping trees in close proximity to the trail.
But the direct answer is no. You didn't note it on any. It's not noted on any plan. That's all. I mean, I'm trying to go from what I saw out there to what I see here, and it would have been nice to say, see how that tree was there.
Yeah.
We've gone around. Okay. Just for my own edification, I don't know if any other commissioners were looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
In terms of your method of removing the invasives, it's an unusual method in terms of what we normally see and would permit in terms of brush cutting with large equipment and
Right.
in effect just slashing the place to bits and then try to come back and dab, sort of splintered and fractured stems is an experience that we just how'd you come up with that, and what expert are we using to verify that as a who's advised that, in other words?
Well, so I guess I'd like to recharacterize our approach to it. Is the invasives that are presently out there on location are between 6 and 12 feet in height, and it's a massive half an acre area of which is impenetrable to get through. So we thought as the first pass, and this would be particularly in the sort of upper, let's just say within the 50-foot area, is that the invasives that are in there, we'd like to follow the guidelines of the town, where if it's under 2 inches, we'd like to just try to pull them out.
Mhm.
If it's over 2 inches, we're fine to cut them and do the cut and dab them, and try to cut them down at a very, very low level. Now there's so much stuff out there that we're having, it's a lot to manage. And so there are portions. I mean, if we were to take this sort of methodically, we would probably start high and start to remove the honeysuckles that are up on the high ground and make our way closer and closer towards into the different buffers of the 50-foot down to the 25-foot. And that changes in topography and it changes in vegetation. So the dense honeysuckle that we're talking about is really the combination of cutting the large stumps and then treating them, and then pulling out the smaller material so that we just pull it right out by the roots. So that's the honeysuckle that's on the high ground. That's in the area where a lot of that area we're actually regrading some of that because of the trail that goes down towards the lake. So that's the honeysuckle area. There's a transition area between the honeysuckle and going down into the 25 to 50, and then within the 25 in the low topography. And this is heading over parallel along the driveway, where we get a whole zone of mixed chaos of probably 5 different things going on there. And it seemed like it would be helpful to have the ability to just go in and just brush cut some of it out of there. But it's at some point we need to get in and really know what we're dealing with. So I'm afraid I probably mischaracterized how we were trying to approach it, because certainly we're not looking to go and do sort of a ravage kind of thing. We would like to be strategic about it. But we know that at some point we can't just do it with hand cutting. It's got to have some level of machine intervention. What we tried to do in terms of the machinery component of it was to say, above 50 feet, we're going to use chainsaws, and we're going to use heavier cutting machinery to cut down the big honeysuckles and pull them out of there and remove them so we can see what's left, daub them and cut them down to the ground level so we can get some mowing going on up there. As we go down into the knotweed is, it's 10 feet tall. It's this dense thicket. At some point we have to get all of that material out of there to actually see what we're dealing with in terms of the sprouts and everything. We've been so that's sort of an approach, is that we like to start high, work our way low, and gradually work our way down into the areas that get more and more hard. We think the hardest removal for invasives on the site is going to be the knotweed in the bottom. So what we tried to do in that description of the narrative was to define a series of sort of acceptable behaviors and a strategy that would be generally acceptable, but it is contingent on that we will be hiring an invasive contractor to do a thorough, both a sort of an approach plan for implementation of invasives. And we are totally fine to bring that plan and share that with staff to troubleshoot it, and then to have your ultimate approval of the plan. We can go and do an actual, to do a more detailed invasive plan, but what I can tell you is there's so much going on out there that as soon as we write it, we're going to go on the site and it's going to become, we're going to be adapting it in the field almost immediately. So what we would prefer to do is really get someone under contract for a scope of work that's acceptable to the town and to proceed methodically in the removal process. And also to really define probably several years worth of incremental work to watch it and monitor it and make sure that each step that we do in the removal is.
Traditionally, we have most of that in the approval process on the plan that we approve. That it's unusual. I mean, there's a public benefit here. I'd like to bend as much as I can here and support this as much as we can. But we got to be darn careful that we don't start permitting way out of our normal permitting process, so others can use it as a precedent, frankly, and say, well, if you let yourselves do whatever you wanted, but you won't let me, because we would normally. The state came with a very specific invasive removal process on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which we were able to see and approve, and it was you felt comfortable that it was controlled. And I'm sure you guys are going to do a wonderful job in the best you can. Don't get me wrong. It's just that it won't be on paper.
So can I just,
and may I say, I have these forms. It's called Attachment H. Who is the author of that? When you see these, customarily ESS is on many, but H and J, who authors these? Just so if we were questioning.
So I assembled that document
Mm-hmm.
in consultation with several of our team members.
Okay.
And I guess I would also note that our office did the Bruce Freeman project.
Yep.
And if you all recall, and we went back into our own records on it, that the approval on that was contingent on an actual specific action plan by a remediation firm to do that. So that's basically what we're asking for here, is the opportunity to do that. And
that had a few outstanding things, but not as great as this. Any of my commissioner friends have other thoughts?
On the invasive removal?
Any way you want to head, kid.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the question I had on the invasive removal, because what was outlined here, I have to admit I've not seen these methods brought to us on other projects. So I was surprised by them, but I was wondering, what is your experience in applying these methods, and how did they work? Were they effective?
The brush cutting and by machine and that sort of thing?
Yeah, brush cutting by machine, the way of handling the knotweed. I just had not seen these before. So, when we have new things come to us like this, one of the questions we ask is, what's your experience and success rate in these approaches?
So our firm as a whole has extensive experience in projects, whether they're bicycle paths or transportation projects that have invasives. Usually they're along the sides of projects, along the fringe areas, as we have here. This is a big area. I think we're looking at remediating 25,000 square feet. So we're over half an acre of extremely dense, thick stuff. So we're really, this is a sort of a collage of a number of techniques, probably handling at least 3 or 4 major species, that each of which requires something a little different for the management. The woody species, particularly, understand your reluctance about us yanking those out of the ground. So we're gonna, you've defined under 2 inches to come out of the ground. So we'd like to do that because that removes the roots and everything. And in our sandy soils, those will come out. They sort of shake loose. Now, it won't do everything. The roots may grow into new stuff and sprout, which is why we want a monitoring period after which we do the removal, and also a monitoring period at least into the next growth season from the fall that we do the painting. So that is strategic for us to get that done this fall, to get all of that honeysuckle cut and painted with herbicides, and hopefully have a high mortality rate on those for the spring, at which point we then go in and clean up and grab the rest. So that's the honeysuckle. The,
I do have a question on that. I guess, and maybe it's different for honeysuckle. I always recalled when I've used pesticides to get rid of those type of invasives, that the recommendation was always to paint the stump during active growing. So is this a different
This is a
pesticide? Is that what they recommend?
This is a different approach because, basically it's key to the biology of the plants, where in the spring, the sap's all coming and flowing out, it's going out. You know, it's drawing moisture from the soil and it's pushing the sap up into the plant for growth. It's kind of going the opposite direction from where we want to go to actually kill the plant.
Yeah, I guess I was just remembering what I recall for on-label use of the pesticides I'd used.
Yeah,
So I was surprised by this.
in the case of the knotweed, it's exactly the opposite. And I think we looked at a variety of techniques. You know, to be honest, we've had a few communities that we've worked with that say you got to get rid of the knotweed, but you can't use any herbicides. And believe us, we are not fans of herbicides, but that's an impossible job. It will never be successful. We will never, ever get rid of this knotweed unless we kind of put the hammer down with herbicides. So that is, as has been defined to us, a better strategy to do in the spring when the first growth comes. But in order to find those opportunities to apply the herbicides to the knotweed, we've got to clear out the thicket of 10-foot tall dead shoots that are going to be out there so that we can actually get people in to be able to work in there. So that's the reason for the cutting and everything. We realize it's very important not to leave a whole lot of residue because knotweed is the worst. Every piece you cut goes into a new one. It's kind of a biological horror movie. So
It's
I
an
realize that
invasive.
there are other techniques in there that are a little assertive, like burning. But what occurred, and this was I sort of sounded this out a little bit to staff and to Delia, and just like, we're going to cut all this stuff. We're going to have a massive pile of stuff that's been cut and pulled together. We can take all that and chip it and bring it off to a landfill and bury it, or we can make it go in other ways. So, and we weren't sure that really it's a great idea, the right conservation thing to do, to go and take all this invasive material and go and bury it in a landfill, that then it's going to find a happy new home. So we've been reluctant on that, but I realize that it may be unconventional, but lots of places do ecological management with selective burning. And meadows in particular can come in very.
Oh, we're not doing burning here. So,
No.
So
I guess it's still, yeah. So I understand. I guess given that this is quite a bit different approach than what we've seen and not as much detail, I would find it helpful for me to be more comfortable with this, specifically where you applied these and how successful they were, because it just is. It's very different than anything I've observed in my 4 or 5 years on the commission.
I guess what we're asking is, would you give us the opportunity to bring to you a formal contractor's proposal who specifically gets on the ground and looks at the different species and looks at their methods and means and methods of the different controls that are involved, and bring that back to you? To have some kind of an approval from you this evening or when you're ready, to allow us to proceed so that we can, as we bid the project, we're going to get bids from licensed, pre-qualified contractors for the removal of invasive species. And there's an item list in that for all of these.
Right.
We'll bring that back to you. We'll feed it through Delia. We'll bring it to, we can bring it back to you for that level, because we're not the people out there in the knotweed trying to kill it.
Right. And I guess in all due respect, that what you just described, having an expert go out and survey it and look at what's there and saying, here's the plan, that's what I expect to see before I provide approval for an order of conditions. So that's what I would expect that we would see before we approve a project.
Okay.
Nick, you had something?
No, I'm sorry. It was just a computer made a noise. Sorry.
In terms of, and to be honest with you, Bob, I read your and we could go, it just came in this evening, you sent to Delia, I guess today, I just saw it, multiple paragraphs, which is helpful, but I haven't really had a chance to read it through. I saw it, read it really fast, and I had to come to this meeting, and it starts to answer some of the questions, but I think I understand where Judy's coming from. Usually we have that kind of analysis of, this is what we have out here, this is how we intend on doing it in specifics, and it's in the document that we approve. So that, and I'd be surprised if, I don't know how you go to bid without having something like that, but that's not my strategy or area of expertise. What I'd like to just further move on, if I could, in terms of a management plan, just to cover what was discussed out there in the field. And you had mentioned, and maybe you want to just elaborate a little bit, Bob, about the fence that we talked about to keep. Obviously, we're trying to protect the wetlands, and the edge of the pond is as much as feasibly possible. And if you wanted to just briefly for the public, go quickly over what we're doing to keep people from, we want people to enjoy it, and we don't want them to damage it. And what are we doing about all those things? We expect fishermen, dog walkers, we expect, bird watchers and everything else.
Right. So what we identified in the field on the sidewalk was that the buffer area from the edge of the pond coming up into the open, primarily in the open meadows, was that the existing plantings that were along the edge of the pond, typically within the 25-foot area, although coming up into the 50-foot area, was that was the area of ecological sensitivity. And we wanted to create a situation where we really created sort of a barrier or a disincentive for people to go thrashing around down there and to cause additional erosion, compaction, vegetation, damaging vegetation. And so what we sort of roughed out on location, and that is reflected in the plans, is that basically in the meadow areas of the pathway that goes down closest to the lake, is that the majority of the low side of that pathway has a sort of a rustic fence designed to blend with nature as much as possible, with sort of unpeeled cedar bark, bark on posts, and then with a wire mesh infill on it, applied to the post, that would be such that would be the impediment for people to try to go through it. And
do we have a picture of that, or not to interrupt, but do we have a picture of that or anything?
There's the detail of that in the plans.
I missed that. Okay, fine, I'll find it. Don't worry about it.
Detail of the in the plan set. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I'll find it. Don't worry about it. We don't need to.
So we didn't want it. I think we made it small enough so that most that all dogs except for maybe a Chihuahua or something would be impeded. But we didn't want to have it look like a prison fence.
Right.
We didn't really want to have it be dense. So it's a fairly wide. I can't remember whether it's a 4-inch. I think it's a 4-inch grid on the wire fencing. And it's just a natural, galvanized gray metal wire that'll probably blend in, it'll blend in with nature out there. And it's located right along new plantings that we're doing. So it will blend in with those and protect those too, particularly where we have the whole stretch of the pond shore that we're revegetating.
No, but I think that is the sensitive area, and that's where we saw that would just be an allure that you couldn't blame a dog or even a child for just running down and wanting to get to the water. So I think if we need a fence, that's probably the one area. As much as I don't like fences,
it's the one. Open at the location of the overlook, where there's sort of a viewing area. We left it open there so that people could see through without the fence in front of them.
Yeah.
But we have a little low stone wall there as a bit of a barrier, an edge or a barrier there to discourage people from wandering down at that point.
Now, we've brought this up and discussed it, but I don't, in terms of controlling the people that come out there, and I mean in terms of, have we put together a set of Are we leashing dogs? We're going to allow people, I assume, to walk their dog. Is it mandatory leash? Where is bicycles? Do we have that sort of put together so that when we approve this, we sort of have at least starting rules that obviously will probably morph over time?
So in the late afternoon email to you, I compiled a number of discussion and management points that we've worked over with town staff. So, but I think that a couple of those principles that we're having, like bicycles come in for Bruce Freeman on the access path to the bathroom building where bicycle racks are provided, and then they don't go any further into the site.
And I think we should have sort of that, some document that sort of says that's where we're going to start. Just so we know what we've done, and 5 years from now, another commissioner, or you're in here and we're trying to figure out that we've gotten problems. This is where we started. We're all in good faith, and this is, what we're dealing with.
Mr. Chairman, Ryan Kane is here to speak on that a little bit, if that's what you need.
Well, I think, Kate, what I know you guys are going to manage it and do a good job. I'm not worried about that, and it's fine if Ryan wants to talk. Please, Ryan, talk all you want. But what I really think, what we're trying to do is to get this thing permitted. We're trying to get this all in writing that once we vote, it's there, it's done. You guys go forward. You don't have to worry about us. It's over. And so I'm just urging you to bring all this information to us so we can approve it. I don't think anyone here is trying.
One of the things that we're struggling with, just with that, is that my office in the recreation department and the parks and playgrounds department doesn't necessarily set the rules and regulations for the other parks in town. And so if and when we devise such a plan, it will be the first of its kind. And I'm not sure we have the authority.
You think that might have to go to select board?
Right. I'm not sure we have the authority to be able to dictate. And so Ryan Kane and I sat down and thought hard and long about what we would want to do and how we would capture that on paper. But it really is beyond, as a public park, it really is beyond our jurisdiction, if you will. Well, and we don't have the ability to say to you, this is what the rules are, without having the town manager and the select board say, these are the rules that we want. And I believe that they would probably engage the commission, I would imagine. And I think unlike, some kind of private entity, we have to be very careful to sort of stay in our lane. And I certainly don't want to say that we're going to abide by some rule or regulation that then is not supported by the general public. So
but then
we're kind of at an impasse here on that.
Well, then I get it, Kate. I get your problem. But that we really then can't say that bicycles have to stop at the rack. But what I think we could do is you could present us with what your proposal is going to be. I would assume it would be select board.
Okay. That's perfect. We will do that. Absolutely. Because that is our plan, is to request that.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is. And I just think if we can get all this together, we'll stop having to have these meetings.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we'll get you that, but it's difficult.
I get your point though. You don't have that authority, but it's what you're going to recommend. Best you can do. And and at least then we can say, okay, that we've covered that issue to the best. And if we support that, gives you a little more fortification to the rest of the commissioners. The rest of the commissioners believe that as well. I don't want to be doing all the talking.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we want to do everything to be good stewards of the property, to
I know you
maintain
do.
the resource areas. I just, again, I don't get to dictate, just like the speed limit, we can make a recommendation, but it isn't up to Ryan and I. So we will get you what our recommendations are to the board and to the manager.
Great.
And, with the commission's backing of those, I think, we would have their ear, and that would be great.
Yeah. We'd much.
Greg, Jane here, select.
Hi, Jane.
We would certainly be welcoming that package coming from this, from Kate, Ryan and Ryan, and would welcome any input from you guys at that point.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
All right, so I think we're okay on that. I think does everyone agree in the commission? I mean, we're all right on that?
Yeah.
That'd be just fine. Does anyone else from the commission have any more thoughts?
Question.
Go ahead, Nick, please.
Yeah, there were a few other things I was just noting that came up during the site walk regarding closure of existing trails, how discontinuance of trails would be completed. Just there were various things like that, and I just haven't seen that those are addressed tonight.
So
Were
when
you-
we're
you
on
were-
location,
Just there were some of the notes that came out from the staff out of the site walk.
But you were not going to close those paths, were you? The ones that went on? Bob?
No, I think, many of those are the natural pathways that
Exactly.
have sort of been devised by people who are using the property, both officially when it was owned by the Giroux and unofficially by non-Giroux while they owned it. And since then, I think what we're trying to do is entice people away from those and hope that over time, with less use, that they grow in naturally. But we are not looking to put any fill in there. We're not looking to really disturb it at all, but to try to say, while this path may be here, we have a better one for you just immediately adjacent to this, and hope to try to entice people to another area.
Yeah, I recall what we were looking for is just a statement like that. What was the intent? Because we did come across these trails and we were wondering what the intention was with them. So I think including that.
I think in the trails narrative, in the materials that we provided, there was a discussion of the sort of informal trails that were out there. And so what we talked about on location was that they would be retained. I mean, the reality is that they're basically just sort of, they're slightly beaten down to the forest floor. We could probably rake some leaves over them some fall and they'd be gone the next year. There aren't any of the informal trails out there that are really causing any negative environmental erosion or anything like that. So, and we do expect people, in fact, that's part of why we're doing some, the pruning and thinning, is that people feel comfortable in the forest out there. We're going to create nice, new, accessible walkways that will be the sort of traveling route of many people coming to visit here, who won't want to venture further informally into the, onto the side trails. But at this point, the idea was just to leave them in place and not do any intentional removal of them. I think it would end up being difficult.
I think we also said somewhere in one of the documents that we were not planning on maintaining them. And so by the very fact that we're not going to maintain them and then hopefully not encourage as much foot traffic, that they would eventually resolve or dissolve themselves.
Okay.
Well, go ahead, Nick.
It's a minor point, but it was just mentioned that perhaps we'd rake leaves over them to discourage. Well, that's different than just leaving them. I just like some clarification of which route we're taking. Are we just going to leave them the way they are, or are we going to do something to discourage them?
Yes, that's in the memo that you guys got, that we are leaving them the way they are with the hopes that when someone is afforded an option B and option B is more attractive, that option A will cease to exist over some period of time.
Beautiful. That's fine.
Well, and actually, just to make sure it's said in public, because it was said as an aside out there in the field, that our Trails Committee in town may come to you guys, and they keep a lot of trails in this town open and usable, and they're accustomed to dealing with these off trails without widening them and making them overlay. So you may see something happen in that regard, which has absolutely nothing to do with this proposal here, but it was an aside out there in the field, and I thought it should be mentioned.
There are wonderful opportunities to work with them.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, you may find them knocking on your door, but I can't say that for sure.
Well, we would welcome that, because we'd rather them tell us what seems to be reasonable versus us just guessing. But
you're absolutely right. And me too. I don't want to be managing the trails here. All right. I think
Greg, I had another question.
Please, go.
And it's kind of a twofold. It's clarification. It relates somewhat to the 25-foot waiver, and then also on the proposed impact mitigation restoration areas. So if I'm reading the waiver correctly for the 25-foot, it's a waiver for replanting and trimming trees, which I recall we talked about. Yet when I look at the proposed mitigation in the 25-foot, I see that there's also invasive species management, and we did discuss that a little bit earlier. So I was surprised that that was not included in the waiver, because that is a disturbance, and say, well, it's just kind of paperwork, but it, you know, how one goes about doing that and ensuring that it's done in a way that protects the 25-foot no reserve space as much as possible. I would think that would be important to include.
Alex?
Does that make sense to anybody else?
I'm going to let Alex speak to the waiver, and then I can think.
I thought the idea was that because the invasives management is not considered really an impact, an adverse impact, that that would not be included in the waiver request, although we do discuss it generally in the narrative and show it on the plans.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That is true. We were advised that removal of invasives was not an impact, certainly not in the consideration of, it is mitigation unto itself.
It's exactly.
So,
okay.
So that's correct, but it should still be addressed in the waiver request, just to capture all of the work that's within it.
Yeah.
It's a benefit, and any work that is within the 25-foot no disturb zone is intended to be restorative in nature. You just capture it in that waiver request.
Right.
Yeah, it should be light lifting to just add it, guys.
Right, yeah.
I think it's a point that whether it's in or not is, we know you're doing it, it's in other areas, but it would be nice just to throw it in because why not?
Yeah, because I know we've seen that in other ones. And then the other question I had related to, and it's specifically in Area C, where there's both invasive species management, which I believe is the removal, and then replanting for stabilization of the slope. Are those one in the same areas, or those different areas?
They are. There may be a little bit of invasive species of some buckthorn in the revegetation area in the slope restoration, but largely they are exclusive from each other.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is Sage Leader GPI. They're definitely not double counted as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just curious about that.
Thank you, Sage.
Okay, thanks.
So I did want to note, and I appreciate that you asked both of those questions, Judy, because the documentation of the impacts and the translation of that into the mitigation strategy and the quantifying of all of that was a lot of the work that we did, bringing this back to you folks for this level of review. And so, there were some questions in the email this afternoon about the differences between data that we provided in May versus data that was updated and altered for the submission that we sent. So basically what we've arrived at is that the calculation of the mitigation of the 10-to-1 and 1-to-1 mitigation sum total is, there's a mathematical exercise on that comes out. I think it's that we're mitigating at like 14.6 to 1 or something like that. But the reason for that is, there's several, is one of which is we didn't want to bring to you an exact match foot by foot of impact to mitigation, because frankly, there's a margin of error. We should have a level of I'm going to call it trust and confidence that we were truly going to mitigate at least this to your standard of requirement for what we need to do. So that's the 10-to-1, 1-to-1. And then we looked at the site and we just said, it doesn't make any sense to stop short of a certain geographic area on the site, looking at the site for where we needed to really be, sort of aggressive in going after the mitigation. The large amount of which is really the the large amount of which is really the invasive removal along the shore between the old driveway and the lake there, where we've got this tangled mess. So that's the reason that the numbers are different. If by any chance, and I will admit we were really pushing hard to make it in, to be in with you folks tonight, given holidays and other things. If there's any inconsistency in terms of numbers that are on the tables, on the drawings, and in the waiver documents that we may have missed, we will correct those and bring those back so that they're, that everything is accounted for. But the difference of why we're doing more is just that it's just that margin of error and wanting to have everybody comfortable that we're going above and beyond the standard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. So so the numbers that are in attachment J, those are your most up-to-date recent numbers. Is that how I would interpret what you just said? So it's table 1, proposed impervious areas, and then a table under it, and then the mitigation. So I'm just looking to make sure I know which numbers we think are the most up-to-date.
Yeah, from my recollection, tables that are on the plans were also included in the document. If by any chance, at 11:30 at night, we missed one of them, we'll fix it.
Okay.
And I can guarantee you somebody was working on this at 11:30 one night.
Yeah.
So just in terms of having those numbers, I think we understand that to some degree it's an approximation, but when the commission issues a permit, there are numbers associated with that permit that DEP requires to be included on the permit. So that's why we need to have those numbers be accurate numbers to the best of your ability. We understand, 10 square feet plus or minus here or there. We just need those numbers to be consistent so that we can include those on the permit.
And I think that's why Alex generated the 14.6 ratio, and it was his expertise that guided us in that direction.
Thanks.
So just to clarify, is there an inconsistency between two different documents?
I didn't see one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the one of the submittals stated that there was 1,830 feet of alteration within the 50-foot no-build zone, which requires a 10-to-1 replacement. So that would be at 18,300 square foot mitigation for those impacts within the 50-foot no-build zone, and then a 1-to-1 replacement of additional 100-foot buffer zone impacts. So what the 50-foot no-build waiver said, it was a 14.6 to 1 mitigation ratio, which it can't be because it's only 22,000 square feet of mitigation plus 5,000 for the additional replanting. So those numbers just need to be clarified. It just needs to be consistent. So there's the 10-to-1 mitigation requirements for work within the 50-foot no-build zone, and 1-to-1 mitigation requirements for work in the 100-foot buffer zone.
Just check the numbers and make sure they jive. You're saying they don't jive. Does that answer your question? You all set with that? I did want to point out that Public Works has looked over your stormwater management, and now that seems to be all settled and approved, which is good news. And you're doing more testing out there. Is that you're going to have a town witnessed? Is that the reason for it, or you need more testing out there?
We need to do test pits appropriate for the septic system.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, and you're going to have the town witness. Those will be town witnessed?
Yes, they will be.
Yeah, I just want to caution you.
Afternoon of the 30th.
I'm not telling you your business. I'm sure you know it. Any other questions? I'd like to open it up to the public. Is anyone out there in this ionosphere have any thoughts, questions? Please come forward now if you do. And by the way, Ryan Kane, if you did have something to say, please speak up. I didn't mean to cut you off when I was talking with Kate, but
Hi, this is a Sage Sluter at GPI. I just didn't get a chance to clarify. There was a question on the trees that were being removed versus the significant ones that we outlined for protection. And
Yes.
that is on the vegetation management plan. It starts on page 8 of the plan set. And so you can see the trees that we surveyed. And we do have the diameter of the trees, but we don't have the species. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I don't hear anybody else in the public. I mean, I think you guys probably want to go to the 12th. I assume you don't want to skip. So if it's all right, with your permission, we will continue this to the 12th.
Oh, we look forward to it.
Oh, no sarcasm, Kate. It's way too
No,
late in the
I
game for
mean
that.
it. Now we have our marching orders. We are ready.
Okay. I hope so. It'd be nice to put a lid on this.
Well, you know what? We would love to just have people in town know that we are trying our darndest to get some type of shovel in the ground, but I appreciate having a little more direction, and we will get something to you all and the select board within the next week. So.
Super, super. Thank you. All right, moving along to DEP file that we don't have a file number. It's 1134 Main Street. Who
Do we need
is
to
here?
vote to continue this?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody's got to keep their eye on the, I need a motion to continue this until the 12th, August 12th. Ed, please.
I make a motion that we continue, let's see, file number 137-1522 to the August 12th hearing.
Second, please.
Second?
Wait a minute, that was the one we just heard, isn't it?
That's right. We're just doing a continuance, that's all.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Now, let's vote. Nick, how say you?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thank you, guys. I look forward to seeing you on the 12th.
Thank you for your continued consideration and patience. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Moving along to 1134 Main Street, Core Estates Group. Who is here? Alan, I see you. I think your mic is off. Can you turn it on? Or Delia, are you alive and kicking?
How's that?
That sounds great. It's DEP file number 1371536, by the way. Go ahead. Where are we?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have provided additional information to the Natural Resources Commission on July 10th, addressing some of the items, all the items actually, that were brought out in your review memo. So there was some informational requests on areas of different features, and so we provided that to show the area of the existing structure that is sitting on the site. And we provided a document that addressed the volumetric analysis that we did for our flood storage computations. And today I provided just some presentation tools that we can go over to kind of visualize how we're regrading the site to provide that additional flood storage that was requested and required.
If I could interrupt just for a second, Alan, in terms of the existing structure, did you do that by measurement, or how did you get the size of that?
Well, we did it two ways. We did it by our survey measurement, yep, and it's also listed that way on the assessor's department.
And the two numbers agree?
They do.
Okay, that's a question I have.
1,270 square feet, and that's the main building. You know, we didn't count the canopy, but occupied space on the ground is what was measured.
Okay. You also out there, and I appreciate it, and I briefly saw your submittal today with the colors of how, I don't know exactly how you actually literally move the ground around to shave it the way it appears.
That's a good adjective. And what I thought I would do is I could put these side by side if I can take control of my screen.
I don't think you're going to be
Just tell
able
me
to.
where you'd like to go, Alan.
I've got, is this Delia?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, could you just give me control?
Is there, I
'Cause
mean,
I've got my screen set up, so I've got,
so
for each
if-
condition, I've got the existing and proposed side by side on my screen.
so those should be submitted to us so that we can share those.
Okay.
I
Well,
will transfer sharing to you. We
all
don't generally do that.
okay, I appreciate it.
While we're in the midst of doing that, could you answer, you had some test holes, borings out there, yes?
We did,
Was that done by an LSP, or what was the motivation, and who did that, and what was the, let me preface that by, we have had some letters from some neighbors with some questions, and I did just want to get that in the record, but did you have an LSP, and what were the results, and whatever?
okay, well, the investigations that we performed on the site most recently, if that's what is being discussed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
At our first meeting, there was a comment that we investigate the drainage system,
That's correct.
do a camera inspection.
Yeah.
So that's what was done. There was no need for an LSP. So we hired John's Drains to flush
Oh,
out.
no, that's a different subject, which I'll bring up in a second. No, I had thought that, I don't know, last fall or something like that, there was some borings done out there.
Yes, there were geotechnical borings that were done for our foundation design.
Aha, those were not done for a 21E or anything else.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In terms of the 21E investigations, that's been brought out in a couple of letters from the public. And
Correct.
yeah, and that, just for the record, you know, that site involved the previous TD Bank facility, which was a gas station.
Yep.
And all those investigations were performed. Monitoring wells were analyzed over a 2-year period, and that cleanup has been certified closed by DEP, and all the records are available online.
Okay, thank you. I just want to get that on the record as what actually transpired, and you weren't doing a 21E. All right, let's go back to, sorry for that interlude.
That's fine. Good use of time. So yeah, what I'm got on my screen here is what I submitted today, and this is really a visual tool just so that you can see what we're shaving and how we accomplish our excess flood storage by the time we get to you know, our finished surface elevation. So we live in a 2-foot world here. So the way that this works is our lowest site elevation is about elevation 123. And the floodplain elevation is at 125. So that's the narrow column that we have to work with on the site. So what I've got here is side by side existing condition on the left, and right-hand side is the proposed condition. And the bold dashed line in all of these figures is our project limit. So that's where the measurements were taken. And I have shaded this area in blue that's below 123, but it's beyond our project limit. It's on our property, but there'll be no change. So this area is where that picnic table is and where the trail starts that runs from Baker Avenue, just for orientation purposes.
Yeah.
So the existing condition figures were all taken from our on-the-ground survey that was performed. And then the proposed condition is our design. So I thought it best to show them side by side so you can see how we build the flood storage. So the existing condition here on the left, we're trying to show this by elevation because we've got to show every 1-foot increment that we're matching our excess flood storage by each elevation. So the lowest area is this catch basin. The rim grade is just about at 123. So this is our ground zero, and we're calling this zero flood storage within the project limit. When we do our proposed design and reshape the ground, this area we found we could lower just a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 inches, leave the catch basin where it is, but this shaded blue area within the curbing and the driveways would serve as the base so we could add a foot of storage total above that when we go to the next elevation. So I'll do that now. Might take a second.
That's all right.
Here we go.
While we're waiting, where are you with the Board of Appeals on this? You have to go to them. Oh, we're up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Forget that.
Okay. No, I'll answer. Yeah, we are on schedule to meet with the planning board again on the 10th and the zoning board on the 12th.
Okay.
So it looks like we'll be shoehorning you folks in here as long as we don't have any more issues to address. But
yeah,
yeah, we had our first hearing with them, and based upon comments, we continued until we got all the items addressed. But
yeah.
Okay, so here again, same project limit, existing conditions on the left. So I've shaded all the areas that are now below elevation 124 on the site. So you can see that here's the existing building in place. There's a landscaped island here next to the drive-throughs. That area is above 124. And then some of the landscaped areas around the building. And then, of course, out in front are above elevation 124 at present.
Yep.
So you go to our proposed condition, and you can see the benefit of where this 123 contour is. We can stack 1 foot of water above that. And then by shaving and lowering the elevation of the parking area is how we achieve, you know, a pretty comparable, just visually, area of 124, but we get extra depth because of lowering the parking area in the rear here. And, you know, we make benefit of where this parking row is in this location. This is roughly where the existing building sits. So you can see by the removal of the building, we also gain a lot of flood storage. So you can see by the comparison of the volumes here, again, this is just within the project limit. You know, we're almost doubling, or actually we are doubling the available flood storage. This is really where we get the bulk of our compensation, between 123 and 124.
Okay.
All right, so then we'll go to 125.
Now I've got it.
So here is our existing condition again. The landscaped areas up along Baker Avenue and Main Street are really the only areas on the site that are above 125. And the building existing encloses, you know, some storage. The elevation of the floor is about 124 and change. So we take advantage of that 8 or 9 inches when we remove it in the proposed condition and get the benefit of that flood storage. And then only the building footprint and, you know, this entry sidewalk sits above elevation 125 in the proposed condition. So we can maximize that storage. And we do slightly increase our flood storage by doing this regrading. And overall, we maintain a 1.5 to 1 ratio, as our data has shown you.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take a low-tech approach and, you know, break out the highlighter, but I thought this would be the best way to
that is
elevation by elevation rather
yeah,
than
no, I get it. I
area
get
by
it.
area.
Yeah, it does help. That does help. No question. It's still shaving though, isn't it? Annie, we're going to take back control here.
Yes, go right ahead.
Just
Can you stop share, Alan, please? Thank you.
there you go.
Oops.
Okay. I think, now, just to point out, you've videoed the drainage because you're tying into the town drain, and I know a meeting or so ago, we had said, let's make sure that is functioning and functioning properly. You've done that, and your person says it's functioning properly, and I assume you will send those videos off to town engineer just to vet, so that the town feels comfortable as well. I assume you're doing that anyways, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to mention
we've
that.
done that, and I've reached out to
Oh, good.
DPW staff to get their take on it. We provided it to conservation staff, obviously, just to review. But surprisingly good condition. It's corrugated metal, but the interior still has the galvanization on side, and there is some surface rust, but perfectly reusable. And we are replacing a portion of it out near the street anyway, to make our new connection, because the new building location interferes with the alignment of the existing piping. So there will be probably about 100 feet of new piping provided anyway. And the sumps of the catch basins will need to be cleaned out during construction, but the pipelines themselves were jetted out while we did that inspection.
Good. All right, the commissioners, any questions from the commission?
I had a question on the impervious surface table. There was provided riverfront zone, existing condition, proposed condition, and then 100-year floodplain. And is that actually the 100-year floodplain, or is that the 100-foot buffer zone impervious?
Well, we were asked to address this information. So the square footage areas are actually what was requested. So we were asked to provide impervious surface area within the riverfront zone on the property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then also the areas of 100-year floodplain
Okay.
on the property.
So it's floodplain, Judy, not 100-foot
Okay.
buffer.
Okay.
Not buffer, yeah.
Really, most of the issues here are riverfront, not.
Right.
Correct.
No.
Yeah, the
Right,
100-foot
and Alan, I
buffer.
clarified with you last week that it was a mistake on my part for asking for the 100-year floodplain impervious. We need the 100-foot buffer zone impervious, but we need also the square footage of work within the 100-year floodplain. So you should have an email from me
Okay.
requesting that from last week.
Oh,
We'll-
okay.
We'll address that. But yeah, the 100-foot buffer zone exists on the property, but it's within the area where the trail is. So it's not within our project limit.
Okay.
So there's zero alteration in the buffer zone, although it sits on the property. So yeah, the large bulk of our work is going to be within riverfront zone, and obviously the floodplain, because that encompasses most of the property.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Ed or Nick, anything?
No, nothing. No.
You're all set, then I'll throw it out to the public. Do I have,
So I just have a question. I'm sorry,
Go.
Greg. I just have a question in terms of the flood storage. So the proposed building is at the fifth elevation is at 126, correct?
Right. Current standards for construction in the floodplain, we need to get the finished floor a foot above.
Okay. So you are constructing that to be above the floodplain. So no portion, or what portion? I mean, what's holding up the building that would be within the floodplain? And are you accounting for that when you're doing your floodplain calcs?
Yes, yeah. The building itself will be supported with typical, frost wall foundation, and there'll be no open space beneath it. There won't be a full foundation, but there'll be, footings and foundation walls and a slab.
Okay, so is that fill in the floodplain being accounted for in your calculations of cut and fill?
Yes. Yeah, if you look back at the proposed condition for 125, you'll see that, we're using flood storage all the way up to the foundation walls.
Okay, it's to be honest, it's difficult for me from those PDFs to understand the cut and fill you're going through it was really helpful during the meeting just now, but it's difficult to interpolate how you're calculating those numbers based off a highlighted PDF with numbers provided.
Yeah, it's, we're taking the surface and taking measurements, and that's how we're providing it. I've just done it here with a low-tech approach rather than.
Right. So if you can just send me the, what your drawings look like, where you actually analyze those cut fill volumes. Is that?
And I think a cross section would help as well. So we can draw cross sections through.
That would be great.
Each condition, just to show you how we're lowering the existing terrain to start that excess flood storage. I think that would
be very helpful. Thank you.
All right.
Right along that line, did I hear you that the existing building, in effect, had some 8 or 9 inches of flood storage inside it because its floor was below the flood elevation, but the new one will not provide any relief from flood? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. To meet flood insurance requirements, we're compelled to keep the floor a foot above floodplain.
Correct. So the former building, however, did, and you've taken advantage of that, but you get no benefit from the new structure.
Right.
Okay. I just want to say that out loud because that's what I thought you had said. All right, public, I'm still open to you. I don't see anybody chiming in. So if you are willing, Alan, we can, you have a few things to do. I think you have a little bit more with the Public Works folks, getting them to see your drainage reports and sign off on them. And we'll see you back here on August 12th. Does that work for you?
It does.
And if that's the case, seeing no public comment, maybe I could have a motion from one of my commissioners. I think Ed's turn.
Yeah,
I'll
I
make
think
a
so.
motion to extend the hearing for Core States Group, NOI file number 137. I think it was 1536, Greg, you noted?
Yeah.
To August 12th hearing.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. So Nick, all those in favor, Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And Judy?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Good. I'll see you. We'll see you, Alan, on the 12th. Thank you so much.
Excellent. No, thank you, folks. Appreciate your time and patience.
Yes, thank you. Moving right along at breakneck speed, file number 1371534, Fenn School, 676 Monument Street. Who do I have the pleasure of working with and talking with?
Yes, this is Dwight Dunk with Epsilon Associates.
So I believe I'm Dave Platt from Fenn School. I believe Dwight Dunk is also going to lead us.
Right, Dwight, just so you know, your voice was quite low, so.
Okay, let me try turning up my speaker.
Or maybe I'm deaf. I might note, guys, that we do have a few letters from the neighborhood. So I'd just like to say that out loud so you know, and you may have copies of them. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, is that better?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Not a lot. Okay, David, are you doing it or Dwight?
So let me.
We were hoping Dwight, I think, was going to start us off.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just was using my earbuds with the speaker, and they typically have worked.
That's better.
Okay, no, it's fine. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission members, and Delia. The Fenn School, as you know, we submitted the notice of intent. The hearing was continued for a couple of administrative purposes. One was there was no DEP file number issued yet. That has been issued. Also, there had not been a comment letter received from Mass Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. And Natural Heritage has submitted the comment that the project will not result in an adverse effect of actual habitat. So those two items are taken care of. We submitted an additional information package dated July 10 to respond to comments, questions from the commission and the public. I won't read that in its entirety, but I wanted to hit on a few main points that we've provided in that package to demonstrate that the project is compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act, compliance with the performance standards for the applicable resource areas, and therefore protects the interests of the Act. First of all, we did provide a revised design of the floating dock structure. And what we did was to rotate the dock so that it's more parallel with the shore and does not stick out as much on the upstream end. So now the downstream end extends out into the river about 8 feet, 8.5 feet as it did before, and only about 14 or 15 feet versus the 24 feet in the original design. We think this is an improvement so that it is closer to the shoreline. As part of that, we also had the surveyor go back out and relocate the existing canoe rack, and that is outside the 50-foot buffer, the 50-foot no structures. And that would be the existing rack, and future racks would be in that same location, such that there is no structures proposed for the project between the 25-foot no disturb and the 50-foot no build zone. The work within the 0 to 25-foot no disturb zone continues to be just the footings for the gangway, which are 2 10-inch diameter sonotubes. One of the other,
but may I interrupt? Just that those
Yes.
are permanent structures. Those two.
Those 2 sonotubes are permanent. Yes.
Just wanted to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in combined, they occupy about a half a square foot.
Yeah. But for the record, they are exactly.
Those are permanent. The canoe racks are temporary.
Correct.
But they would be located outside the 50-foot setback.
I didn't want somebody to think that your sonotubes were temporary. Go ahead.
Sure. The other kind of more technical question relative to the mitigation is we did talk with a restoration ecologist, contracting firm, about the different options for establishing the pollinator meadow. And what we proposed is basically a means and methods where that zone would be tilled or rototilled to disrupt the existing meadow plants, and then seed that zone. That kind of full soil restoration option gives the seedlings a better competitive advantage versus the other options that would be there of just mowing and overseeding or a shallow disking and overseeding. In terms of the use, as we described in the additional information, the use here is for the Fenn School and the summer camps that also utilize the Fenn School. And with that, there'd be about 22 boats, the racks with 4 canoe racks that each hold 6 boats, that's 6 canoes. That means that 22 to 24 canoes could be stored on site. But again, that would be outside the 50-foot zone. So that covers most of the technical criteria regarding the proposed work structures within resource areas and the buffer zone, the state wetland protection act buffer zone, as well the town bylaw zones.
Okay. David, did you have anything?
No, I mean, I think
I'm not. I didn't know whether you did before we started asking.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm just eager to hear more questions and anything else.
I think my first question is, because 22 canoes, what is your canoe situation currently? What has it been over the last 5, 10 years? What have you been doing, and where have you been doing it, and what did that look like?
We didn't have any access to any river or any waterfront, so we didn't have a canoe program.
So this is a brand new venture that you're going into.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the property for a couple of years, and we've had a canoes. We have, I think, 6 canoes now, but only over the last, I'd say, year, I think.
And so this is so I'm just trying to get a situation of current impact versus future impact as to what we're doing here. So we're and 22 canoes from the original 6. So there's going to be, how often are they used during a day? Is it and you said, is this something where you're going to launch 22 canoes at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to be on the river with kids and in them, students or campers for the entire, onload and offload and on all day long? What's the management plan here? What are we looking at?
Yeah,
I'm thinking of impact, and I'm trying to help the neighbors and everybody understand what they will see when this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is, with or without the dock, we'll have this kind of canoe activity there, and there'll be that number of canoes generally. And I think, to be fair, I would say it's not likely to sort of all of a sudden be that. You asked for sort of what we think the maximum number of boats would be. So I just think over the course of, whether it's a year or 5 years, I could see us, seeing our program. That the count basically comes from having the potential of, as a guess, up to 2 classes maybe who would want to be out there at any one given time. And again, we're a school, so we have schedules, so it's not like they are going to be out there all day. But if we break up a normal class into canoes, and you multiply that by 2, you'd have about 16 canoes you'd need for just the classes. And I added a few extra for the staff. And then, I think there was a comment asking about the type of boats. These would all be there's no motorboat or any kind of motor activity. These are all hand paddled boats that we'd be talking about here. And the safety boat it's just another canoe that we keep on shore in case we need to get out there quickly to help someone.
So when you say boats, you mean that's a canoes?
Canoes or kayaks, that type of, that's the only thinking we've had about it, honestly. So, and again, I think whether the dock is permitted or not, these canoes are, this is going to be something that we're obviously eager to do and share with the kids and our community. And we think that the reason the dock is essential is it'll actually protect the shoreline from all of the things that are coming in as public comments that people purport to sort of be concerned about, we think would actually be worse if we didn't put a dock in. So yes, that's our concern.
Yes, as we've written in the notice of intent and in the additional information, we are talking about middle schoolers launching and landing the canoes and having that foot traffic over the bank for several canoes at a time, versus the gangway, which is elevated over the landform. The revised plan does include a cross section, so that it shows everything is above the landform, actually protects the bank from that pedestrian access over the bank on a routine basis.
I think you're right, Dwight. I think, frankly, if you don't have a dock and a gangway, you wouldn't be able to run a program of that many canoes, because you would degrade, and we would get called in, and we'd have to work out a remediation situation. So I agree with you that we don't want 22 canoes sliding down the bank on a Sunday or a school day, without question.
Do you anticipate, just in terms of the number of canoes and the usage, do you anticipate that each time the canoes are used, that they're going to be taken out of the water and taken back to the racks? Or do you think that sometimes they'll...
Yeah, no, I think that part of the process is you put your canoe in and you take your canoe out and you put your paddle away and you hang up your life jacket, and you get it ready for the next group. It's just normal procedure for managing and teaching how to use a canoe.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious.
So to be specific, the canoes would be taken up the bank over to the rack and re-racked every time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we wouldn't be leaving them there.
I mean, most people just.
In either situation with a dock or not.
Yeah.
You've submitted a waiver, and in most everything it talks about students, but campers, and I assume they're youth camps, the day youth camps.
That is currently true. Yeah.
Okay, and you run those throughout currently you run youth camps, correct? I mean, it's not a change in.
No.
Oh, so you don't run youth, so that's new as well.
We've been running our summer program. There's been summer programs at Fenn for over 40 years. The camp has run its own camp for 20. Yeah.
That's what I'm driving at. The camps are not a new phenomenon. This would be an adjunct if it worked out that people wanted to do this for the camps. All right. Up in the fields, you're frankly, to some of our dismay, the field was mowed a couple of times, and it was mowed when the bobolinks were nesting and what have you. And do you continue to want to do it that way, especially in the land that is under our jurisdiction?
Yes. I mean, I think we continue to need to manage all of that land in the same way as it's been managed. So it's, always been, I mean, at least for a decade or more been that way. And so we do.
But that was because it was an owner who was in 61A, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And you're not in 61A.
No. So
you don't need to mow it to keep your 61A because you're not in 61A. I'm just asking whether you would be good stewards and consider, especially in our buffer zone and what have you, of mowing maybe at the end of July so that the bobolink and whatever hatch. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that tonight, but what I would say is, and I hope you appreciate this comment, is that I do feel like we are good stewards. And I would say, I know others might question that, but that's unfortunate. And I would say, my other comment would be, there may, Greg, to be honest, there are some legal issues around how the transfer from 61A to 61B works, and maintaining the operations in the same way, at least is the advice that we've received we need to do. So at least until the transition is complete, that's our understanding.
Okay. And commissioners, please chime in if you have questions.
Do you know when the transition will be complete?
I don't know. I think it's my understanding is that it usually takes a year.
So pretty soon. You could change it pretty soon.
Yeah, it could be within a year.
Okay.
Or next summer.
So that could conceivably be a condition.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is the commission looking for a change in the time of year from mowing, still keeping it as a hay field and haying it?
Well, the thought was to at least get through, July, the bobolink hatch, and get, meadows have disappearing throughout, and when we have an opportunity to keep an open space, we kind of like to ask people if they would give a shot at doing that. And this is an opportunity where we thought you might be able to help in that regard. I mean, you got a big field there. I don't know what to quantify. You might want to quantify it and get back to us with what that would mean to you. But it would be something we would, if you're going to mow. I mean, if you mow it August 5th, it still stays as a field, and you mow it at the end of the year, maybe in November or something, and it doesn't grow up and get. But meadow grasses and all that sort of stuff get to grow. You're going to use ryegrass annual, and
in the pollinator meadow.
Yeah.
What we in discussing the means and methods for establishing that.
Yeah.
If we go with the more rigorous approach with tilling that area, rototilling that area, the best time season to seed that would be the autumn. The concern obviously is when you do that type of work, you have some exposed soil that has the potential to be, subject to erosion. And so therefore the idea was to use some annual rye for some quick stabilization. Many of the pollinator species do need that overwintering for the seed, seed stratification to germinate in the spring. So the autumn seeding is best. A fall seeding means that the winter rye probably, there's a chance that most of it would not go to seed and have viable seed, that it would be damaged by the frost before, but it would give that soil stabilization. If some of it did go to seed, yes, it would come up the next year, but it would decline, and technically it'd probably be gone within 2 or 3 growing seasons, and just have it be the intended seed, the intended pollinator community.
So the favorable, you think, will be able to eliminate the annual rye over time?
Correct, because the annual rye is an annual. The perennials will maintain an above ground, stems, and therefore, basically shade out and outcompete the annual stuff over time.
I wish that was my crabgrass. I wish that were the case with my crabgrass, but
yeah.
Thinking that we want to funnel the users, the participants in the canoe, to the ramp and down the ramp. What is the method? What's the management plan to keep them? I'm a 6th grader and I got to launch my canoe, and I see two fourth graders mumbling on the thing. What prevents me from sliding down the slope and launching my canoe? What type of management plan have you devised to take care of that? I don't know if that's a David or a Dwight question.
That's probably, well, Dwight could take a stab at it, but I probably, the students would be supervised, our campers would be supervised. Certainly as it pertains to water, it becomes ever more serious for us to be vigilant about those rules. So it's not a play space when we're down there with those kids, and that's what I would say.
And Greg, in terms of getting from the campus down to there, the intent, as we described the notice of intent, was to have a 10-foot wide mowed path through the meadow, and that path would be kept low. And does that mean kids may not go into the deeper meadow, taller meadow? It's not a permanent barrier, but kids are going to want to stay on the shorter grass rather than cutting through the tall meadow grass.
Well, I'm thinking weekends, I'm thinking times like that is, do we a management plan, do we plant blueberry bushes along the edge that'll help feed some birds and keep the kids from being able to slide their canoes down to, I'm just asking out loud, but you did raise a question that I was going to ask you, and that is the plans that we have seen, although very well defined in the direct proximity to the launch, it does not show us where that path is that comes in from the rest of the campus, where that's going, et cetera, and I assume it's going through the buffer zone and what have you. So it would be nice to say, okay, how are these kids actually, where is that mowed path that you're going to keep tightly mowed, et cetera?
And that is depicted on figure 7. In attachment B of the notice of intent, the pollinator meadow plan.
Oh,
yes.
I don't have that on my desk.
Yeah.
Okay. Dwight, I didn't have that on my desk this week. So, all right, I'll take a look at that. Further questions from,
Yeah, I guess the question back to the pollinator meadow and putting down the rye grass, just consideration, I was looking at the elevations in that area, and it's pretty flat until one gets to the riverbank. So I was just curious about whether that area would actually erode if it were exposed over the winter time. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and frankly, it is flat. However, we're talking about having that hug the existing BBW, and we want to avoid sedimentation into the BBW. So, the annual rye gives us that belt and suspenders
Mhm.
until the pollinator, the proposed seed mix germinates and stabilizes the soils.
Okay.
So I would just strongly recommend against annual rye because it is not just, it does not die off after a year or two. It is very persistent. We have put in pollinator meadows. We have not used it. We just do a light mulching with straw with a fall planting. And in this area where it's so flat, there's no need for, if it was a steep slope or something like that, then yes, I would say do something, probably not annual rye, but do something to stabilize. But it's so flat, there's no need to worry about that. And, let's just give the pollinator plants a chance to get established without heat.
We can certainly make that that change. I was, as I said, conferred with someone who is more expert at this means and methods than I am. So I just wanted to get their input, and we can certainly modify that.
I just wanted to get on the public record. There were some, and I don't know if the people are on the call here, that our jurisdiction is created by mass law, and we have mass law and town regulations, and some things we have jurisdiction over and some we don't. And people talk about the scenic river, and it is definitely a scenic river, but it is not really our bailiwick to be judging what happens here in terms of the scenic river aspect. We may have personal feelings, but as commissioners, we don't. I just wanted to, that's been raised a couple of times by some letters that have come to us and what have you. Dates of use. What are you suggesting here? Is it like April 1 to November 1, or what are we doing here?
That sounds fine to me.
No,
really. I mean,
I'm not suggesting. I'm not saying what I would like. That leads to my request. My request is, could we see a page of management practices? Who's going to use them? The camp. It's going to be, will people be, supervised at all times? Can kids go down there at off times? Will it be faculty members? Will it be friends of faculty members? What are the restrictions? I'm not asking for that tonight, but I'm saying I think we should know and have our hand. When I hear 22 canoes, that's an awful lot of canoes. I don't know how many go in at the bridge by Kai's Road there, but 22 would be a high number, I think, Delia, for a day, even there, and that's probably the most highly launched area. So I think we should have some, and that leads me to the thought of somehow having a management plan of having people, if we do permit this way, that they funnel down the gangplank and they wait their turn to go down rather than saying the heck with this, and we ended up that you guys get in trouble with eroded shorelines, and we're back here talking about how to, I don't want to have that happen. So it seems a management plan covering those issues and thinking it through, even though it may have to modify, at least it's something for us to look at going into this. Retrieval, I think it should be said that the students and the campers will be taking those out and putting them on the rack and putting the stuff away after every usage. I think that should be spelled out, that sort of thing. I'm not telling you what to do, nor am I going to tell you the dates. I think it's up to you to present the dates, and it seems to me when it's canoe season, it's probably when you're going to canoe, right? Not exactly heavy lifting on that one.
I'm curious, Greg, I was curious about where the floodplain is, and I don't know if that would have any impact in thinking through the season it would be used to. As I recall, it kind of floods over there in the springtime. So is there a floodplain in this area?
The FEMA 100-year floodplain extends up to elevation 120 and AVD. These drawings are an AVD, National North American Vertical Datum of 1988.
Mm-hmm.
Some things to note here, the ANRAD plans, or the ORAD plans, prepared by Stamsky and McNary show a watermark, a water line at about elevation 114. And that was in April of 2018, I believe was the date. Semiotis, who has prepared the plans for this notice of intent, they did their survey in January, and the water elevation when they did their survey in January was about elevation 112.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously the 1% chance of flood, i.e. the 100-year floodplain, does extend up to elevation 120. However, the you know, more normal range is, you know, a handful of feet as opposed to up to that full 100-year flood elevation.
It might, this sort of thought might, in terms of timing, David, say, you might say to yourself, look, we're not going to do it between X and Y, or if we've had a flood that comes up to the bank or whatever, we're going to shut the thing down. I mean, I think those kinds of things would begin to define what we're doing here, you know, and get everybody on the same page, you know.
Absolutely.
That was a good question, Judy, that raised that issue, I think.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from the commission? Delia? Open to the public, please. I'd love to hear the thoughts out there.
I'd be happy to go first if I may, Mr. Chairman.
And I see you've got an R. Chasen. What your first name?
Richard.
Thank you. Please, Richard, go.
The host has asked you to start your video. Hang on, let me just see if I can get you a face with me. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
My name is Richard Chazen. I live with Dr. Susanna Bedell at 131 Carr Road. We are an adjoiner.
Please speak up. Please speak up and get closer to the mic.
I'm sorry. We live at 131 Carr Road.
Thank you.
This property. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to once again come before you and to ask our questions. I've submitted a letter to the NRC, or Dr. Bedell has. I won't take the time to read it tonight, but there are a couple of points that I would like to highlight for you. First of all, we were frankly shocked to now learn that this is a 22 canoe facility that's being proposed. That was not disclosed in the original application, and frankly, we find that to be a bit deceptive. And I appreciate that the chair asked the question if it could be limited to 6 canoes last meeting. So we now know what the full size of this facility that's being proposed is. I now feel like I need to ask a whole lot of other questions. Will there be boats? Will there be jet skis? Will there be rafts? Will there be swimming? I heard Mr. Platt indicate that there will be kayaks. I didn't earlier tonight. I mean, how many kayaks? Where will they be stored? I just urge the NRC to make sure that you have a complete application here, a complete description of what the intended use is. And I really do believe that a master plan for the entire property should be submitted, and that is very appropriate. I mean, we're sitting here talking about bobolink nestings and mowing of fields. Who knows what Fenn is contemplating for the rest of that property? Are there going to be synthetic turf fields? These things impact flora, fauna, river view sheds, runoff, and are all, I believe, things that should be considered as part of this application. The second point I wanted to stress is I am concerned that if you do choose to approve this application, you are setting what I believe is a very dangerous precedent. Anybody who owns property that has frontage on the river can now build their own dock. And is that what we really want to see up and down the banks of the Concord River? I don't think so. Yet this, I believe, opens the door to others having the same idea that the Fenn School does. And finally, in our letter, there are several questions that I raised. Let me just highlight a couple of them. It appeared to me that the wetland delineation that's being relied upon was done in 2018. I don't know if it's the NRC's policy to have a more updated delineation, but I raised that question. I'd also like to know if non-Fenn users are going to have access to this facility. I know that on Fenn's synthetic turf field, for example, the local soccer clubs use that field. Is Fenn also going to make their boat dock available to others in the community? And are we really seeing the full use of this facility if it is constructed? I raised the question about restroom facilities. 22 canoes, that's 44 students plus teachers. It's considerable distance from this location to the main Fenn campus. And so what is being planned for restroom facilities? Are kids going to be told to go behind a tree? Are they going to have to walk back to the main campus? How is that going to operate? You know, I did not see on the revised plans the location of the 4 canoe racks, the additional storage buildings for paddles and personal flotation devices. I just have no idea what this is going to look like. And so I would like those questions to be answered as well. And last meeting, I believe the Fenn people indicated that the dock sections would be manually removed at the end of the season. Is it really realistic that 6x8, 250-pound dock sections are going to be carried out of the river by students, by maintenance people, whatever? I fear that it really is going to require mechanical equipment, and I think that's going to be very, very disruptive to the no build area and the no disturb area, and like some clarification on that. And finally, one more point: the dock is actually connected into the river with augers, and the augers are in casings, and it is not clear to me on the plan set if the casings are going to remain and just the augers will be taken out, or if the auger and the casing will be removed. Because obviously I think you need to know that if the casings are going to be contained in the river permanently, and if this augering and driving casings is going to have to happen every year. So those are our comments at this time, Mr. Chairman. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for your comments. There were multiple issues raised there, lots of which you're more than welcome to answer at this point and address at this point, please. But I think many of those issues speak to the plan that I would be seeking, and I think the rest of my commissioners, in terms of what your plans are in terms of usage, who's to use it, boats. The assumption I'm going under right now is canoes and kayaks, and that's it. But I think like those things have to be spelled out. The last point that Richard made, I believe it's just augers. There's no casing. Is that correct? I just want to get that question just from a simple. But please answer that question as you wish, but there were multiple questions of which I took some notes that I would expect those answers as well to be part of this plan I'm asking. And a very good question is, hey, what are you going to do? There is quite a distance, and I would like to know what the distance is from the nearest faculty building or wherever the kids would be able to use, or others would be able to use a facility. That would be an interesting thing to think about. But if you'd like to answer any of those questions, fire ahead. Dwight, go.
Yeah, I'll answer a couple of those questions. One of the questions was about the 2018 delineation. Yes, that's still valid. The Conservation Commission, the Natural Resource Commission, issued an order of resource area delineation, and that's valid for 3 years. So that delineation is still valid, and that's why we're relying upon that delineation. Number two, in terms of the auger, the augers that would the poles, pipes that we intend to be using have an auger fitted on them. There's no casing that remains in the river, and the intent here is just to have those 4 poles augered into the riverbed to stabilize the floats in the river because there is the current in the river. So there's no intention of having any permanent structure remaining in the riverbed during the non-boating season. In terms of the uses, I would refer back to David on that, but the total number, as David mentioned, I'll let him provide some more information, but right now there are 6 canoes. The intent is to have this program hopefully, increase over time. I don't think they're talking about having 22 boats there the day after this is permitted, but to have the program increase over time. In those number of slots in the racks would, as David was mentioning and we presented in the letter, if you have 16 kids, 14, 16 kids in a class, 2 kids per canoe, that leads to a number of canoes. If maybe you have a class of kayaks, then you have a number of kayaks or a few kids doing kayaks. But I don't think the intent is to have a huge flotilla of boats, and it's all, as David mentioned earlier, it's all paddle boats, not motor boats here.
May I just say to that, when I heard 22, and I think that was probably precipitated by my question last week when I said, I assume that we can set a limit of 6, and you've come back and said, no, I'd appreciate a limit of 22. And I think the neighbor has raised an interesting point. You may want to run 2 classes that need 22 canoes, but it may not be the proper thing to do here. And I can imagine every house, if we had 10 or 15 people along the river that all wanted to run a boat ramp launch, you would have quite an impact on that river. And Fenn has not addressed the issue as to why Fenn should be at 22 when people try to get docks in and they go through this process to get just to launch a small 1 kayak for the family. So I think those are things that some kind of supervision and analysis by the school might be helpful. If you have any more to say, please, I'm not going to cut you off. I just thought I would just let you know that some of these issues that he's raised are what I think the commission would expect to be answered when you come back next time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we can provide a management plan that answers a lot of those questions, and probably to save everyone some time tonight, not really worth going point by point.
Correct. That's what I was hoping. Yeah.
That's fine.
Anybody else out there in the public that would like to chime in? You're more than welcome. Please don't hesitate.
Dave Witherby.
Yes, David. Your address, please. For the record, your address, please.
195 Heathbridge Road. I am the Concord representative for the Wild and Scenic River, for the Wild and Scenic Suasco.
Yes.
And I also happen to be a volunteer at Great Meadows across the river. And I do live on the Sudbury River. This site on this wild and scenic river has some unique values, including history and scenery. And those come about. There are other values that we like in terms of river quality, for example, which is much the same that the Natural Resources cares about. But we add on it history, and we do that because it's a place where William Brewster and Henry David Thoreau were very active. So it's, we think the Fenn School, I think the Fenn School, I should say, needs a dock to launch a canoe because you couldn't put in a sand beach kind of thing as they have on Lowell Road, or one that they have around the corner just downstream at Great Meadows, because this happens to be on the outside bend of a river, and the river's flowing through and it's picking up, it would be picking up all of the sand and drifting it away. Right now, it is primarily a bunch of rocks. It isn't high bank, it's a very low bank of a couple of feet, basically, where they want to put the canoe, the dock. But what it comes to my mind is that it's, the site is on the outside bank. It's going to pick up on the outside bend, and it's going to pick up a lot of debris that is floating down the river. The bigger it is, the more debris it's going to pick up. From a safety point of view, I think you probably would have canoes that are launched by students, maybe one at a time. Instead of on the sides, it'd be more prudent to have them out there in the end anyway. I think that the plan for the dock, which I understand to be 23 feet wide or something like that, sticking out into the river, I think it was mentioned earlier tonight, up to 15 feet. And you have a ramp that's something like 25 feet. It's an aluminum ramp with aluminum rails. This goes back in my mind to the scenic part and the history part of the Wild and Scenic River. So it's kind of something that certainly the wild and scenic aspect would not fit, or it does not fit it. The probably this dock, if they're to have one, should be something more like 6 feet into the river, maybe 10 or 12 feet long. When I say long, I mean along the river bank. The river happens to be, or this site happens to be at, if you went out about 3 feet, it'd be about 2 feet deep. So it drops off quite a bit. And this, by the way, is when the river's very low, which it is now. So I'm talking about current measurements. If you had 14-year-old boys there and you had a tree that was bending out, they'd walk out over the tree. That's the way they do it. They're 14. But somewhere between the 14-year-old and this size of this dock is something more prudent. And I think in the permit plan, the meadow was mentioned to be, and tonight some of that was there too, was mentioned to be a pollinator thing, and it was going to be made into a meadow. I happened to be over there when the bobolinks were there and watched the bobolinks. I went back a few days later, and boy, was I shocked to see that the bobolinks were mowed. That was very disturbing. And, you know, they are an endangered species. And there are other birds like meadowlarks and everything else that are interested, or many others that are interested in that. I went over there about a week and a half ago, and it was mowed down the middle where this path to the landing is, the dock is intended to be, and it was mowed around the edge. And it was but where it wasn't mowed, it was a very pretty meadow. There were flowers up. It was really beautiful. And in my mind, this is great. And I thought, no, boy, maybe they're more concerned now than they have been. Then I went back a few days later and they mowed it. And it's now just a useless lawn. And it tells me something about the school, the Fenn School as an entity, doesn't seem to really care about nature and preserving nature and doing what nature needs. And I don't know why, but I do believe, I'll bet anything, that the teachers, the students, the kids, the parents of those kids care. I think I'll bet you find a lot of people who care about the nature aspect, and I don't quite understand why the school doesn't. And so I can't have trouble believing about what's going to happen with this nature. And by the way, I don't know if they really need a pollinator plant. If they left it there as they did a while ago, there were a lot of native plants growing up automatically. And it is very flat, so there's not going to be much runoff. One of the concerns, or that says that maybe the school as an entity doesn't care, is that artificial turf field as well. That shouldn't be there. And that's draining into the river, of course, as it mulches down to small bad particles. And that's tonight all I want to say, but I can write more later time.
Thank you, David. Thank you. You're more than welcome to respond if you want to, or at your leisure. Thank you, David. Anyone else? Please come forward. It's an open exercise, and this is all helpful. Well, I don't see any others. It seems you have some work to do, David and Dwight. Do you want to continue until the 12th, or what's your privilege?
That's fine. The
All right.
one question that I have is in terms of August 12th, when is the material required to be submitted?
July 31st by noon.
That is next Friday?
Yep.
Okay.
We can talk about it offline if we.
I mean, you're more than welcome to continue if you don't have it ready. I mean, it's not.
Let's continue to that hearing date, and David and I will talk. And
yeah, I think you have some issues and some points that have been raised. Just speaking again, the scenic, as much as I empathize with the comments, some of that is not in our purview, but it's very well in our minds. Could I have a motion, please, to continue to the 12th?
I'll move that we continue until the 12th. Let's see, what is it? The number on this?
137-1534.
Yes, NO file number 1371534, Fenn School, 676 Monument Street.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor, Judy?
Aye.
Greg? Yes. Ed? I'm just
Aye.
going across. And Nick?
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. All right, see you guys on the 12th. Thank you.
thank you.
Moving right along, we're going to 30 Walden Terrace. We don't have an RDA. Oh, we'll be RDA file 20-6. Who is here working on that and helping us?
Hi,
Jeffrey.
this is Peggy.
Hi, Peggy. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Fine. So it seems to me we have a porch covered that we want to turn into a room. Is that what we're doing here?
Yes.
And we're not going any closer to the, I'm just trying to move this along. We're not going any closer to the wetlands?
Correct.
You're going to put in a foundation, but it'll keep everything in its current bounds and situation, correct?
Yes. Okay.
Usually it's pretty light lifting, but I'd ask the commissioners if they had any questions. Please, Peggy, if you have anybody want to testify any information, please do throw it up here.
Oh, no. Would you ask Delia to let Jeff Bremen?
He's
No, I can ask Delia. I'm sorry.
Jeff.
He's here and he has his hand raised. Jeff, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted, but I can't. You can't see me in the video.
You can.
We hear you though. Don't worry about it.
That's good
Don't
enough.
worry about it.
You see my picture. Hello, Jeffrey Brem with Meisner Brem Corporation. Mr. Chairman, I know it's late and you seem to have got a good grasp of the project. Would you like for me to go through about 2 minutes worth of describe it to you?
It's totally your prerogative what you want to do. Go ahead.
Okay. You got me now. So 30 Walden Terrace is a small existing lot at total 8949 square feet. There's an existing dwelling on it. The purpose of this project is a remodel. So there's no change proposed in the footprint. The wetlands were flagged by Leah Basbanes. We've used her a lot in the past. She's out of Dunstable. There's no wetlands on the property itself, and all the wetlands are here off the property on the Housing Authority land to the northwest, I'm sorry. There's almost no land there is no land within the 25 foot on the property. So we're in the 25 foot, or actually larger than that. It's a small portion of the 50 foot offset is here to the southwest. And then about half the parcels within 100 feet of the buffer zone. There are existing mature trees on the left side here, southerly side. And there's one tree that's been demarcated as a potential hazard, which is just inside the 50-foot line. The project is pretty simple. They're just going to remodel it, no change in the footprint. There's a porch in this section here. I don't know if you get that. That porch has a sonotube footing. So that was being proposed to be replaced with a full frost wall. So foundation wall, I'm sorry. And in order to do this project, it required more than 50%. Since it required a 50% increase in floor area, even though the footprint's the same, Peggy Dowsett went to the Board of Appeals and got a special permit on May 14th. And it was granted by the Board of Appeals. So basically, the project is very simple to take this sonotube, make a porch out of it, a permanent porch structure, remodel the inside, raise the roof, no increase in footprint, no increase in area. There is a patio proposed in the rear portion of the property to the northwest. That pad and that bulkhead, moving the bulkhead from the rear of the house to the side of the house right there. There is a proposed erosion control line riveting the whole scope of work, essentially. And there are 2 new plantings being proposed, 2 new maple trees, one here and one here, to replace, thank you, that was quick, to replace the one that we would like to cut down that's unhealthy, and a dogwood tree, and some various shrubs and flowering plants around the property in the back. We filed this as a determination of applicability in the hopes that we could get going. As you know, we missed a meeting last month. Peggy Dowsett is a realtor in Concord. She has left the town for a while and wants to move back in. This will be almost walking distance to her office.
Thank you, Jeff. By the way, you only get paid for 2 minutes, even though you took exceptionally long.
I talked a little fast.
May I point out that the construction is 61.8 feet from the wetlands, so that we're beyond the 50-foot line, which is our sensitive line. So I have no further questions. Anybody else?
No.
Just a quick question. So the removal of the tree is part of this proposal here, so that would be included.
We would like to be included. We're kind of short on time. If you had a real big problem with that, we would postpone that, but it is a hazard. It's just inside the 50. We're not going to do any real work to it, and we're going to replace it in kind. So
I just want to clarify in terms of what's included in the RDA.
Thanks, Judy. Any other questions, Nick or Ed?
No.
Open to the public. Anybody out there that has any thoughts, please feel free to jump in. Wait a few seconds here just to be sure people have a chance. I don't see anybody coming in, so I would like somebody to maybe make a motion.
I make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability number 3 with the following conditions. Pre-construction meeting will be held on site before demolition begins. Disturbed areas to be loamed and seeded. Replacement trees are to be planted per approved plan, and a letter shall be submitted to the NRC when work is complete. Any changes from the RDA shall be described, and this is for RDA file number 20-6 for 30 Walden Terrace.
Thanks, Judy. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor, Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. So you have your determination. Thank you very much for coming in, and good luck on your project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Yep.
Good night.
Thank you. All right, we have some, that brings us to closing issues, guys. Can we?
Sure. I make a motion to close and issue order of conditions for 42 Shore Drive, DEP file 137-1531, with findings A, B, and C, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through 51.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. All those in favor, Judy?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thank you. Moving right along, DEP file number 137-1525.
Oh, this is a certificate of compliance?
Oh, we did the Great Meadows earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Okay, let's move to certificate of compliance, DEP file number 137-1375. 150 Garfield Road. This is all done? This is all done, Delia? Everything's cool? Okay, somebody make a motion to issue a COC?
Make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 150 Garfield Road, DEP file 137-1375.
Second.
Thanks, Nick. All those in favor, Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. Administrative approvals. We have one for 256 Throw Street, tree removal.
So the 256 Thoreau Street and 15 Fielding Street, those are abutting properties. And there are 4 trees on 256 Thoreau and 2 on 15 Fielding Street. And one of those 2 on each of those properties is actually on a shared boundary. So on 256 Thoreau, there's half of one of a maple, a cherry, and an evergreen that they would like to remove, as well as remove a stump and do some pruning of additional trees. And then on 15 Fielding Street, it is removing a maple and then the boundary maple as well. And these are all within the 100-foot buffer zone. Staff has reviewed them and recommends those removals. The homeowners are willing to plant either 1-to-1 trees for those removals or 2-to-1 shrub replacements.
Anybody have any thoughts, any problems with that?
Nope.
We need a motion on this?
No.
All right. Go forth and take them down.
I will
25
just point out that one of the homeowners is on the call here and has been sitting through the entire meeting. So I'm Mr. Carries. If you want to unmute yourself, if there's anything that you'd like to add, feel free to do so. You are under no obligation to do so if you don't wish to.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Yeah, we were just, if there would be any questions, we're glad to answer. But actually, we were asking, because one of the trees branch just fallen on our car.
Oh.
And yeah, it made the damage like $9,000. So so it's good that nobody was hurt, and that's why we decided that that maybe it's good.
Yeah.
Also to to take care of those other trees as well, and yeah, so that's why.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming in. And if you sat there all night, I apologize, but it's the way things are. Thank you very much for coming in and being willing to speak up. Thank you. So I think we're okay with those trees. 25 Lowell Road.
So there are 5 trees that are within the floodplain and the outer riverfront area that are, there's a butternut, 3 Norway maples, and I'm not recalling the 5th tree. It will come back to me, but there are 5 trees in those resource areas that the homeowner would like to take down for basically health of that little woodland area. And they are willing to replant with 1-to-1 native tree replacements. Catalpa is the 5th one.
Catalpa, oh, those are dirty trees. No objection, anybody? Okay, good, that's fine. 394 Monument Street?
So there's a willow tree that fell from the bank of the property owner's house into the Concord River. It is partially obstructing the river. It does not pose a hazard to boaters. The homeowner would still like to have it removed and has submitted a proposal whereby a tree company would come out on swamp mats and remove the tree. He's willing to replace that with either a silver maple or a red maple. And a fairly large specimen. It's very visible from the bridge across the Concord River at that point.
Yeah.
And so he just is not interested in keeping that tree that's in the river, but is willing to replace it with a decent sized native replacement.
Did the tree fall in because the bank had eroded away? I was just wondering where they would put the replacement tree so it doesn't fall in.
Right. So no, it was a willow, and it just was old and rotted. It's quite an old tree, and it just basically snapped.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a natural falling. It wasn't anything to do with erosion of the bank.
Okay.
And the bank itself is currently, it's not eroded at all, and it would be flush cut so that the stability of the bank is left intact.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with that. Does anybody else? Well, folks, it's the end of the road. Hate to say goodbye, but
Make a motion to adjourn?
thank you. Seconded by Ed and thirded by Nick and fourth or whatever that is by me. All those in favor say aye. Goodbye. Thank you. See you on the 12th, guys. Thanks so much.
Aye.
Bye.